Hello YouTubers. Well, somebody in the comments of one of my recent videos suggested that I do a run of BGA chips and see just how much gold I can get out of the BGA chips that I've collected lately. And well, to be perfectly honest, I've been itching to process these BGA chips. I just was kind of waiting until I had more of them, but I'll go ahead and do it now. You know, I got nothing against collecting a little bit of gold now. I can always let them pile up again and do more later. So I've got a whole bunch of BGA chips here. These are all Broadcom BGAs. I don't know if the Broadcom thing is showing up on the video, but these are all Broadcom BGAs and a couple of IBM BGAs. They kind of fell apart as I was taking the copper backing off, but those are IBM BGAs. Now I put these Broadcoms. They had the solder balls on the back, the grid array. I boiled them in hydrochloric acid to take all of the solder off the tin. I don't want that contaminating the gold. So I boiled all of these BGAs in hydrochloric acid first. And then over here I've got a bag full of just the tops of gold corner BGAs that I've collected, and I've got quite a few here. So I thought what I'd do is I'd weigh up how many BGAs I've got, process them, weigh up the gold I get from it, and we'll get figure out what percentage of these things is gold. I think they're probably my favorite chips for getting gold out of, other than stuff that has obvious gold plating on the legs or lids or whatnot. So, okay, so let me weigh these up and then we'll process them. Okay, 7.044 ounces, or, there we go, 199.7 grams. Wow, it's just about exactly 200 grams. So, we will see exactly how much gold we get out of all these BGAs. So I'm going to process them. I am not going to wet ash them like I have done in a previous video I've posted on YouTube. And I'll put a link to that video up in the corner up here for anyone who's interested in seeing it. What I am going to do is I'm going to ash these in my propane powered foundry. It's a little bit of compressed air trickling into the crucible that they're going to be in to make sure that they get completely burned up. So let me get set up for that, and I'll show you that process as it happens. So here's my propane foundry set up, and I have a video online about how I ash chips in the foundry, and I will post a link to that up here too, and I'll put links in the description. Hopefully I'll remember to do that. Sometimes I forget. So I got a crucible down in there in the foundry. That's the burner right there. So what I'm going to do is, first thing, I've got a piece of steel brake line, and I'm going to put that down in the bottom of the crucible, okay? And that's going to feed air to the bottom of the crucible. I've got my air compressor set up over here, and a little regulator, and I'm just going to feed a trickle of compressed air into the bottom of the crucible. And what that's going to do is allow the chips to totally oxidize. They're basically going to burn off all the plastic. If I don't put the air into the crucible, it's a very reducing atmosphere inside the foundry. And what I'll get is the chips will be totally pyrolyzed. All of the volatile components will be baked out of them in the heat. But what will be left behind is a lot of black carbon, which I don't really want. So I want to burn off that carbon. So this air trickling down there will allow the carbon to burn off. And there'll be nothing left but ash and silicon dyes and whatever metal is inside the BGAs, including the gold bond wires. So everything else will get burned off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the BGAs. This is hard to do with the phone in one hand, so I'm going to put the phone down. Make sure that the pipe is in the bottom of the crucible, and then fill the crucible up with the BGAs. I'll be back. Alright, here we are looking through the vent hole in the top of the foundry. And you can see the top of the crucible down there with the brake line going into it to feed air to the bottom of it. And my poor foundry is looking a little worse for wear. I'm going to have to replace it soon. It's rusting away. But a lot of metal's been melted in it, and a lot of chips have been ashed in it. It's done a good job for me. All right, let me get the camera up on the tripod, and I will get the air line connected, and we'll get the foundry lit and get this process going. I like this process because it's a lot quicker and cheaper than wet ashing, and I don't have a whole bunch of sulfuric acid waste to deal with afterwards. You know, it's just going to take, you know, I don't know, a few cents, a buck worth of propane, and these are all going to be thoroughly ashed. Where it's going to take several dollars worth of hydrochloric acid and all afternoon at least to wet ash them. So this will be done in 20 minutes. All right, let me get the phone up on the tripod and we'll get moving. Alrighty, I think we're ready to go. See if I can get this lit. There we go. Causing an explosion, which sometimes happens. Alright, that's going to take a little while to get up to temperature. I'm not going to start the airflow to the bottom of the chips until after things are good and hot in there, because it's really just, all that'll do is just keep things cool. Once it's good and hot and I see that the chips are starting to pyrolyze, that's when I'll put the airflow to it, and then things will really get hot. It's like blowing on hot coals of a campfire. That crucible will glow so hot. Internal heat, it'll be hotter than the heat coming from the burner. Oh, what was I thinking? It's like 95 degrees and I just fired up the foundry out here. I'm sweating like a pig already. I need something cold to drink. All right, I'll show you what's going on when something's happening. Things are just starting to get warm in the foundry. A little bit of a glow down there at the bottom by where the burner is, and a little bit of flame coming off the top of the chips in the crucible. But things are just getting warm. It's only been burning for maybe a minute. It's been a few more minutes. Things are really starting to get hot in there. Little bit smoky, but not too bad. Gets a little warmer, I'll turn the air supply on. It tends to smoke a lot worse if I turn the air on while the stuff in the crucible is still cold. Alright, the air is on. It's on low. I don't want to... If I put the air in too fast, it will cool things off rather than having the desired effect of heating them up. But as you can see, now there's no smoke. Everything's burning up inside the crucible. Wow, look how hot it's getting inside the crucible. Yeah, the crucible's starting to glow hotter than the inside of the foundry. So yeah, the stuff inside the crucible now is burning in the airflow, just like I wanted it to. It'll be nicely ashed here very shortly. That's the compressor kicking on. Let me get out of the heat. That is hot. Alright, it's a few minutes later. I have turned the propane way down. The burner is just barely going, but look how hot the inside of the crucible is. It is glowing so much brighter. That is the actual chips in there burning up. The carbon in them is burning up. So that's what's producing all that extra heat in there, inside the crucible, from the air I'm injecting at the bottom. So this is going to be done real quick, because normally I will fill the crucible to overflowing with chips when I ash them. And this is my small crucible. I normally use a much bigger one. So this is not a big load of chips at all, but I hope it's a big load of gold in them, because they're all BGAs. Alright, it's been a few more minutes. I actually turned the propane flame off a few minutes ago, and you can see how the inside of the crucible is by far the brightest thing in there, as the chips, the carbon in the chips continues to burn off in the airflow. And it's not showing up on the camera, it just looks sort of yellow. To the eye it's more orange, but there's also some pretty blue flames in there. And I believe that's carbon monoxide burning in there. So anyway, I am just going to let this go until it goes dark, because like I say, the propane's off, and it's all just being powered by the combustion of the chips, and I will just let them burn to completion and start to cool off. Then I'll come back and get the crucible out. It's going to need to cool off before I can handle it. I don't feel like totally suiting up in my metal foundry stuff. I'll just let it cool down a little bit before I deal with it. That is hot in there. Trust me, it is hot. Well, it's been, I don't know, 5-8 minutes, something like that. I should have timed it. But it looks like the combustion is about done. There's just a little faint red glow down in there. And you can see how white a lot of the chips are. So that tells me they are pretty thoroughly ashed, which is good. So there shouldn't have a lot of carbon to deal with, which is A, dirty, and B, tends to hold on to gold. So, oh, there goes the air compressor again. So this is looking pretty good. The cool down actually takes longer than the ashing. So I'm gonna let it cool down a little bit more. Then I'm gonna pull that crucible out of there and dump the contents in that that iron frying pan back there so it'll cool off quicker. And I'll give you a look at it then. It is done. There's no glow in there anymore. I just turned off the airflow. The airflow helps cool things down a little bit once the process is done. But let me pull the line out. Yeah. I think I lost a little bit off the end of the brake line. You have to consider the brake line to be a consumable object. Ooh, that is hot. It gets oxidized in there too, and the end of it comes off. That's why I got such a long piece. I can keep shoving more of it down there. Let me get the crucible out. I hope that's showing up. Still hot as all get out though, even though it's not glowing anymore. Sometimes it all sticks in a big mass down in the bottom. Let's see if I can get it out. I want to leave anything good in the crucible. Got most of it. I will poke at this some more and make sure I get all the stuff that's kind of stuck on the sides off. Oh, there was a big piece. And dump it into the fry pan so it can cool down. And then once it's cool enough to handle, we'll take a look at some of it. So, this has cooled off some. That is really thoroughly ashed. That's nice. Yeah. Okay. I'm loving it. Now, what I normally use to break up the chips after they're ashed is my trusty Hamilton Beach blender. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this stuff in here and thoroughly pulverize it. And then pass it through this rather rusty kitchen strainer. Whatever stays behind in the strainer goes back through the blender again. Circulating very well, so let me see if I can get circulating. It's nice once you get a nice circulation pattern going with the powder in there, and it pulls things down into the blades and chops them up. That's a little better. All right. Oh, dusty. Let me stand back. All right. Probably not the best stuff in the world to breathe. I don't know if that's showing up on the camera. That's pretty well pulverized. I'm sure there's some big chunks in there, but let's see what we got from this initial run. Not too bad. Not too bad. Wow. It's like 90% of it got chopped up pretty good. Just a few little bits need to go back through. Oh, and by the way, that rumble in the background is the foundry. I'm running another load of chips. I figured, well, why not? Since the foundry's out, it's hot, I'm already sweaty, might as well. So I've got a much larger load of chips in there this time. I got my big crucible in there filled to the brim with other chips I've depopulated from boards, but I'm going to keep them completely separate from this operation. I just figured, well, best use of time and equipment is just go ahead and run another load through while it's out. I can multitask. I can do this while the foundry's running over there. Probably just about time to turn the airflow on. I'll have to do that here in a second. Some big chunks in here that I guess just aren't making it into the blades because they're not getting busted up. Help it along a little bit. Now usually with your garden variety, with your garden variety IC chips, I just discard what won't go through the screen. There's generally little, if any, gold in it. Certainly not enough worth going after. I'm not sure about with the BGAs though if I should do that. What I might do is get my loop out and look at this stuff and see if it looks like I see any gold in it. See what looks like oxidized copper in there. I don't really see anything glinting like gold to the naked eye, but I'll look at it with a loop and make sure. I'm going to give this one more trip through here since we're up to about 99.9%. Ooh, I am sweating. It is hot out here. Having that foundry running behind me doesn't help. All right, that is pretty much everything this time. There's just a few little lumps in there. And those lumps look an awful lot like oxidized bits of copper to me too. They're not glinting at all like gold. But I will look at them with the loupe just to make sure I don't discard them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a gravity separation on this stuff to get rid of the bulk of the white ashy stuff and just keep the heavy. And then it'll go into a beaker and we'll see if we can get some gold out of it. Let me get my loupe and take a look at that stuff. I'll be back. Alright, I looked at this stuff with a loupe. I don't see obvious gold in it, but I saw a couple things that are maybe questionable. So normally I would throw out this stuff, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dump it in here. There's, you know, it looks like it's mostly copper, and this is all going to get an acid boil to dissolve whatever copper and other base metals are in it after I do the gravity separation to get rid of the most of the ashy stuff. So that little bit of extra copper I'm not too worried about, just in case there is some gold embedded in it. What they look like is little balls of copper wire or foil that have been beaten up by the blender into like a ball, a tight ball. And on a couple of them I saw maybe like the glint of bond wire sticking out of that ball, but I'm not certain. It's right at the limit of what I could see with the loupe. So I'll just throw it in here and I'll process it all together since there's so little material here. It's not going to use a lot more acid to dissolve that stuff. So, all right. I will get set up to do gravity separation. That may actually happen tomorrow because, oh my God, it's hot out here. I may do that in the morning while it's cool. Plus, I got some chores I need to do around the farm. And then I'm going to need a shower. I am just soaked to the bone with sweat. So, I'll be back when I'm ready to do the gravity separation on this to concentrate it and get rid of this ashy stuff. Alright, it's the next day. Got my wish, it rained overnight, but instead of cooling it off, it just made it oppressively humid. It's already headed for about 90 this morning. Anyway, I've got this powder. This is the remains of the BGAs that have been incinerated and chopped up through the blender. And what I want to do is I want to wash away the bulk of this white ashy stuff. So what I'm going to do is just spray this with the garden hose, get the ashy stuff in suspension in the water column, let it sit for a second or two so that the metal can fall to the bottom, and then I'm going to pour off the liquid. I'm going to pour it into this safety pan over here. Wash the crud out of it. I'm going to pour it into this safety pan so that if any metal does come out, gold bond wires, they'll wind up in there rather than on the ground. So here we go. So just wait a second or two and then pour off the liquid. And a lot of that ashy stuff's going to go with the liquid. And what's left behind, a lot less bulk. It's all the heavy stuff down here. I'll do that again, one or two more times. Let it settle. Pour it off. That is a lot better. You've gotten rid of probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the bulk, and what's left is a lot of silicon dye debris and all of the metal, all the copper, gold, whatever was inside those BGAs. I think I'll do it one more time. A nice clean mixture here. You see how that looks? Yeah, that looks pretty good. And there's, since I didn't do that many BGAs, there's not so much I can't just put all this right straight into a beaker and start processing it. Normally, if I'm doing a huge load of IC chips, what I'll wind up with is probably 5 or 6 or 10 times this amount of material, and what I'll do is I'll get my gold pans out and I'll reduce it to about this much. But I don't think I'm going to bother. We'll just go with this. I'll put this in a beaker and we'll start processing it. Let's see what's in here. Get rid of the ashy stuff. Probably not much in here. Yeah, there's a little bit that made it through. Yeah, there's a little, very little bit down here of material that made it through that first pour off. Alright, just in case there's some gold bond wires in there or something, combine it all in one pan. Alrighty. Next step, into a beaker. Alright, I got all this stuff in a beaker. I've rinsed it a couple of times with distilled water too to get the chloride out of it, because I did the gravity separation with tap water. So I don't want any chloride in there because we're not ready to make Aqua regia yet. I need to dissolve all of the copper and any other base metals that are in there. Now, I didn't show this on camera, I forgot to, but I ran a magnet over that stuff and I got basically nothing. So there's no iron in there, which is really nice, because if you're processing just miscellaneous IC chips, there's usually a whole lot of iron that needs to be removed. So the BGAs don't have any iron in them. Nice, great. So I'm going to give this a bath in nitric and sulfuric acid to dissolve the copper and whatever else is in there. So I'm going to put a couple 100 milliliters, as I'll finish this, more distilled water in there. And then I got some sodium nitrate frills here. I'm going to put a healthy dose of sodium nitrate frills in it. Probably more than necessary, but the heck. And I got some sulfuric acid here. Concentrated sulfuric acid. And this is going to make nitric acid once it interacts with the frills in there. And I don't know if that's showing up on the camera, but I got some pretty good bubbling going on in there already. A bit of a stir. Put a lid on it. And we'll put the heat to it. And oh yeah, there's some bubbling going on. Let me take the camera off the tripod. I'm going to take my gloves off first because I got sulfuric acid on them. I don't want to get that on my phone. I mean, it's still stone cold, and look at all the bubbling going on in there. So we're dissolving some base metals already. And that's just going to get more active as it warms up. In fact, it would help if I turned the heat on. There we go. And should be starting to evolve some brown nitrogen dioxide fumes pretty quick. I'll show you when it happens. It's only been a couple of minutes since I filmed the last segment. We got some brown nitrogen dioxide fumes forming in there. And the liquid has turned blue, and we got some really vigorous bubbling going on, and it's hardly even had a chance to start warming up yet. So there's not a whole lot of material in there, so I'm hoping that one treatment with the acid will dissolve all the base metal. We'll see. I'll probably give it a second shot of acid and nitrate once the reaction stops, just to make sure I get it all. Alright, I boiled this stuff for quite a while, I put in an extra shot of sodium nitrate and sulfuric acid. Didn't really see much of an additional reaction, but I let it boil for quite a while after that. Turned it off, let it cool down a little bit while I had some lunch. So now I'm back, and it's not showing up on the video very well, but there it is. It's a really pretty blue, clear blue liquid there. So there was probably a lot of copper in that that's been chewed up by the acids and put into solution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off the, well, it's not on the heat now. The heat's off. I'm going to take this off of here. I'm going to decant off the blue liquid. I'm going to rinse the mud in the bottom of the beaker a couple of times with distilled water to try and get as much of the copper salts out of it as I can. And then we'll be ready to hit it with some Aqua regia and see if we can dissolve some gold out of it. So I'll show you that when we get there. Okay, I was decanting off this pretty blue liquid and I got to thinking, I wonder if there's silver in it. So, yeah, a few drops of hydrochloric acid, and sure enough, yeah. So this pretty blue liquid has silver as well as copper in it. So that's very interesting. What I will probably do is I will precipitate out the silver as silver chloride from this liquid before the residual goes in my waste bucket. Okay, check this out. I was just rinsing this out. I've rinsed it a couple of times now with distilled water and swishing it around. I really hope that is showing up on the video. All the gold in the bottom of this beaker. I was swishing it around trying to get the gold to settle into a corner, and there it is. There's a fair amount of gold in this beaker. So sweet. All right, I'm going to give it one more rinse, and then it'll be time for Aqua regia. Okay, it is just about time to make Aqua regia. I added some hydrochloric acid, muriatic acid to that water I decanted off and the rinse water I used, and it has turned a milky blue-green. So I'm expecting a lot of silver chloride to settle out of the water column here over the next few hours or a day or so. So it's time to make Aqua regia. In goes a couple hundred milliliters of hydrochloric acid. And then let me find my nitric acid. So here's my homemade concentrated red fuming nitric acid. I'm going to give it, say, about 2 milliliters. And I'll give it about 3 milliliters to start with, and we'll see what that does. It looks like there's a fair amount of gold in there, but I don't want to, you know, put in a lot of excess nitric. So we'll start with 3 milliliters and see how that does. And I got to put the heat to it to warm it up a little bit. And we'll see what happens. I'll show you when we got a reaction going. Well, it's been a few minutes. This is starting to warm up. We've got a really vigorous reaction going on in there. Got a lot of brown fumes being evolved. So the gold is going into solution. The liquid is turning a dark yellow color, which is the right color for gold in solution. So I've got pretty high hopes that we're going to get a lot of gold out of this. And then up here, this is the silver chloride solution. We got a couple millimeter thick layer of silver chloride that's dropped out of solution onto the bottom of the beaker already. Not a lot of silver, but you know, just a little bit. I don't know if I'm going to bother keeping it, but we'll see. It might be fun to play with. I know there's not really very much silver there. But this is cooking along nicely. I'll show you more later. Alright, the reaction had slowed down a lot, so I put maybe about another 3/4 of a milliliter of nitric acid in there, and it is just cooking along like gangbusters again. So I am just going to let that cook and go do some chores and come back on and check on it in a bit. Alright, it's been a little while longer. Got some rough weather moving in. I was out mowing the acreage, and I would stop by and check on this every once in a while. I actually put another little shot of nitric acid in it, maybe another 3/4 of a milliliter, when the reaction seemed like it had stopped again, and really didn't get much of a reaction, so I think this is pretty much done. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off the heat, and I'm just going to stash it in the fume hood, probably overnight, because we got a really bad storm moving in, and I got to put the mower away, put some other stuff away, close up the shop here before the rain starts. So we'll probably pick up again on this tomorrow, where I will filter it and drop the gold. Well, good morning. It's the next day. I got some colorful chemistry going on here. I got some sort of blue-green and some yellow stuff and some clear stuff. So these two beakers just sat overnight. Boy, it got really black. It thundered, it lightninged, it got windy, but we never got more than a few sprinkles out of it. But it was pretty ugly looking. But it's the next day, so you know, get back on it. So this looks like it has a lot of gold in it. We'll do a stannous chloride test on it just for funsies, just to make sure. This, I actually already did a stannous chloride test on it, just to make sure there are no precious metals dissolved in it, and there aren't. It came up completely negative. All we've got in here is a little bit of copper salts and a couple millimeters of silver chloride on the bottom of the beaker. So that can go in my waste bucket. I'll probably siphon it off into the waste bucket, and I don't know what I'll do with the silver chloride on the bottom. There's really not enough there to mess with, to worry about trying to turn it back into elemental silver. What I think I will do in the future is test, the next time I process BGAs, because apparently they have a fair amount of silver in them, what I will do is I'll just test the resulting liquid to make sure there's silver in it, and if there is, what I'll probably do is cement the silver out with copper instead of turning it into silver chloride, because I can't really do anything with the silver chloride, and there's not really enough of it there to bother with trying to turn it back into elemental silver. So I don't know, I may dry it out and put it in a jar and save it. We'll see. Or I may save it wet, because they say you should keep your silver chloride wet because it's easier to process. We'll see. But boy, I'd have to get a lot more of it to make it worth the effort of trying to turn it back into elemental silver. But anyway, let's have a look and see what kind of reaction we're going to get with stannous chloride with this stuff. Interesting to see just how much gold is in here. I got a feeling there's a lot, but you know, my feelings aren't always worth much. I got some brand new stannous chloride solution I just made this morning. Ooh, wow, look at that. That is super, super dark black purple, and just instant too. All right, cool. So that means we've got a fair amount of gold in this solution. What that's going to add up to in grams, I don't know. If I get a gram, I'll be happy. If I get more than a gram, I'll be ecstatic. So we'll see. So what else I have here is some sulfamic acid solution. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use it to denox this stuff. I don't know if there's any excess nitric in here or not, but we're about to find out. You know, I am not seeing any kind of reaction. That's interesting. I would have thought there would be some excess nitric acid in there. That leads me to believe that maybe not quite all of the gold has been dissolved in here. I might have to do a second extraction on the mud at the bottom, because I would have thought I would see some kind of reaction, but I got nothing. So, okay. This might not be all the gold. So, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to vacuum filter this liquid, get it into a beaker, and we'll precipitate the gold with sodium beta bisulfite and see what we get. And then I may do a second extraction on the mud in here. I'm quite surprised that I don't have any excess nitric in here. So that leads me to believe that there was probably gold left in the mud that used it up overnight. And there might still be gold left in the mud. Okay, so I'm going to get set up for vacuum filtration and I'll be right back. Alrighty, so I guess we're ready for some vacuum filtration type action here. Let me get a filter in the Buckner funnel. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pour the liquid in here. There's a lot of solids in here, and some of it's pretty fine, and it'll plug up the filter pretty quickly. So I'm going to try and just decant off the liquid, filter it off, and then I'm going to rinse the solids in there a few times with distilled water and then pour it through. Okay, so let's get moving. Get this done before it gets stinking hot out here. Going to be headed for about another 90 degree plus day with near 100% humidity. I'll be sweating in no time. You can tell how humid it is. I don't know if that's showing up on the camera, but the residual hydrochloric acid in this stuff is fuming in the humidity. Alright, filtering this stuff's going to take a while. I won't make you sit and watch all of it. Whoa, get back up there. Losing a drop. Don't want to lose drops of concentrated solution here. That's... Oh. Every little bit's important. Anyway, like I said, I'm not going to make you watch this filtration. It's going to take a little while. I'll get all this liquid decanted off through the filter. I'll rinse the mud a few times to get as much of the pregnant gold solution out of it as I can through the filter. Then we'll get this into a beaker. All right. I sure hope this shows up. I don't know if it will in this lighting. But I've been rinsing the mud in the bottom of the beaker. I hope that focuses. And there is a band of gold down there. So I did not dissolve out all the gold with this first extraction. So there's going to have to be a second extraction on this mud. That's okay. I just want to get all the gold out of it. I don't care if it takes me 2, 3, 4 extractions. I don't care if it takes a week. I just want to get all the gold out of it. So there's still, you know, if I could see that band of gold in there, then there's still a fair amount in here. So that's good. There's a lot of gold in those BGAs. Okay, so let me get back to rinsing and decanting off the rinse liquid here. And I'll get this stuff in a beaker, focus. And we'll start dropping this gold while we start a second extraction on what's in the beaker there. All right, I'll be back. All right, we are ready to drop the gold. That's what I filtered out of the beaker over there, the first extraction, and I'll start up a second extraction on it in a minute. I didn't bother rinsing that super well because I'm going to have to do another extraction on it, so I didn't need to get every trace of gold out of the mud. So, all right, so time to drop the gold. I am going to do this with the fume hood on, so it's going to be loud. I'll have to holler to be heard over it. Got some sodium metabisulfite here. And then it goes. muddy brown now from a clear yellow. All right, we'll let that go, and we'll see what settles out. I'm going to start a second extraction on that. All right, good, we're recording. My phone doesn't want to work when I'm touching it with gloves on, so, but I got it going, good. All right, so I'm going to put in a couple hundred milliliters more hydrochloric acid. That's probably about 300 milliliters. There was a little bit of water left in the beaker. And now I'll put in a couple of milliliters of my homemade concentrated red fuming nitric acid. There'll be links to how I make my nitric acid in the description of the video. I have videos on that too. So, put a lid on this, put the heat to it, see how much more gold we can get out of this stuff. I'm hoping a lot more. I mean, there's visible gold in there. I don't know how much it's going to amount to weight-wise, but if I can see it, it's probably a goodly amount. So, we'll do a second extraction now while we're waiting on the stuff in the fume hood to settle. I'll show you what's going on when something happens. Well, we got some pretty vigorous bubbling and some brown fumes going on in there, so it looks like we got a good reaction going. Hopefully I can get the rest of that gold dissolved this time. I'm going to be a little heavier handed with the nitric acid this time, because clearly I didn't put in enough last time. I was worried about having a lot of excess nitric. I guess I should have been more worried about having excess gold. So I'm going to be a little more heavy-handed with it. When this reaction seems like it's dying down, I'm going to put some more in, and I'm just going to let this boil for quite a while and see if I can get that leftover gold in there dissolved. Okay, it's been a couple of hours, and I put a couple more shots of nitric acid in here. In fact, I just put another one in, so I'm not really seeing much of a reaction, but I'm going to let it go anyway, just so I don't be a little premature with it like I was last time. And then this is settling out nicely. And there's a goodly layer of gold down on the bottom here. I don't know if that's showing up. Yeah, there's a goodly layer of gold. It always looks like more than it is in the beaker, but that actually looks like a pretty good layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up, dry it up, and then weigh it up. And we're just going to let this cook for now. And I'll eventually call it and denox it. Hopefully there will be excess nitric acid in it this time, and then I'll filter it and we'll drop the gold out of it. Alright, so let me get started on cleaning up this stuff. Alright, this is weird. It's exactly 2 grams. This is from the first extraction. Now it was 2.04, but it ticked down a little bit. It's a little windy. It always ticks down a little bit when the wind agitates the scale. But okay, 2 grams on the first extraction. That is really good. I wasn't expecting to get that much. I was thinking maybe 2 grams total, because we only did 200 grams of BGA chips. So that's like they're 1% gold just based on the first extraction alone. But I got the second extraction going on over here, and there's going to be more gold in it. So, okay, pretty good. Pretty darn good. So, I'm going to put this gold away in a safe place, and we'll finish up the second extraction. I just put some more nitric acid in there, and let that continue cooking, and hopefully I can get it denoxed and filtered today, and maybe even drop the gold and see what we got by tomorrow morning maybe. Okay, but 2 grams, that's a really good start. I don't know how that wound up exactly 2 grams. Like I said, it was 2.04, but it ticked down. So, okay, let me keep working. I'm going to put this away and keep working. Well, there, it ticked down again. Every time the scale gets shook by the wind, it ticks down. So 2.04 was probably the legitimate original number. Okay, I'm just waiting for this to finish cooking. And I thought I'd show you, here's the silver chloride that I collected. It's slowly turning black out here in the sunlight. I don't think I'm going to keep it. I think I'm just going to discard it. I don't really have a use for it. There's not enough here to bother with any of the methods for turning it back into silver metal. Like I said earlier in this video, in the future I will just cement out the silver rather than turn it into silver chloride to get rid of it. So this is just going to go in the waste, I think. I don't really have a use for it. Alright, I have taken this off the heat. I denoxed it just as I tried to do the first batch. This time I did get a pretty significant reaction. There was excess nitric in there, which is good, because based on how long I cooked this, which is basically most of the day now, and how much nitric I put in there, I think I've probably got all the gold that there is to get. So I'm going to let this cool down a little bit while I set up for vacuum filtration again, and we'll filter this stuff off and drop the gold. And it's getting late. I've got chores to do around the farm here, so I don't know if we'll get to see the result today, but certainly by tomorrow the gold will have settled and we'll get a look at it. Okay, one more thing. I'm going to do a stannous chloride test on this stuff before I filter it. See what we got here. Now this looks a lot weaker than the first time around. It's just a little bit yellow. And a nice dark yellow like the first batch. So I don't think I've got as much gold as the first time around. Okay. Yeah, there's gold there. Definitely not as much as the first time around. The reaction was not as quick or as strong with the stannous chloride as the first time around. You know, nothing to sneeze at. I'm not going to throw that gold away. But I'm not expecting to get nearly as much out of this as I got the first time. I'm not going to hazard a guess how much, but maybe somewhere below ½ a gram. We'll see. Okay, it is time to vacuum filter this second extraction. Get the pump plugged in. My gloves on because it's still a little hot. Get out my new gloves. These are just falling apart. So, okay, so here we go. Yeah, this is definitely weaker looking than the first one, but the stannous chloride test showed us that too. There's not going to be as much gold in here. Okay. Well, like the first time around, I won't make you watch this. This is going to take a while. I'll show you when we're ready to drop the gold. Okay, filtration is complete. The volume grew quite a bit. The volume of the liquid grew quite a bit because I rinsed the mud in here several times with distilled water to try and get all of the pregnant gold solution out of it. So what was already a weak solution is going to be quite a bit weaker here. And since the volume grew, I'm going to put it in this tall beaker for dropping the gold. Just so in case there's any foaming, it doesn't foam over. Since this is going to be a fairly weak solution, we might just get a light dusting of gold on the bottom of the beaker. That can be hard to deal with, hard to clean up and weigh, but I have a few tricks up my sleeve for that. So we'll see. Maybe we'll get lucky and it'll agglomerate into some nice, easy to handle grains. We'll see. I don't think I mentioned it the first time around, but the filter here is going to go in my used filter box for the day I process my filters to get any trapped gold out of them. So the first one in the box, this was going to go into the box. It's kind of dirty with sediment that came out of the mud. So there's probably going to be a little bit of gold trapped in the filter. And, you know, one filter doesn't amount to much. But if you got hundreds of filters, well, you're talking about a fair amount of gold probably. So I save them. Okay, so I'm going to get this liquid in this beaker, put it in the fume hood, and we'll drop the gold. I'll be back. Oh, by the way, I swirled the mud around in the beaker again as I was rinsing it, like I've done a couple times in the past. No visible gold this time. And, you know, I can believe I've got it all out this time. So I think I'm going to discard this mud. I was thinking, you know, if there's any chance there was still any gold in there, I'd save it. And the next time I do a batch of IC chips, just add it to that batch. But I don't think it's worth it. If there's any gold left in there, it's just a tiny trace that I didn't manage to rinse out with my all my distilled water rinses. So I'm just going to discard this stuff. Okay, we are ready to drop this gold. The liquid is still pretty warm, so I'm expecting there to be a really vigorous reaction when I put the SMB in. So that's another reason I put it in this tall form beaker. So if it foams up a lot, it won't foam over. Let me get the fume hood turned on, because I cannot stand the sulfur dioxide. It is the worst part of refining gold, in my opinion. All right, here we go. Foaming not as bad as I thought. That sit and we'll see what we get. Okay, it's the next morning and the gold has settled out of the liquid. We've got a fair dusting across the bottom of the beaker, not a huge amount, but there's some gold there. So what I'm going to try to do is get this cleaned up and weighed up, and we'll see how much we got from the second extraction, and then we'll know total how much I got out of all those BGAs. Alright, I'll show you that when I'm done. Okay, gold's all cleaned up. There's not a huge amount of it here, but there should be enough to move the scale anyway. So let's see what we've got. Okay, it's pretty fine stuff too. Hello. But the farm workers just walked by and said hello. Alright, right at 1/4 gram. Boy, that's weird how the first one came out 2 grams exactly, and this is exactly 1/4 gram. I don't know how this happens. There's some sort of weird magic going on there. But okay, so that makes the math easy though. We'll call it 2 1/4 grams. Alright, wonderful. So, 2 1/4 grams, and I had It's a little bit windy, so it's going to bounce around. So I had just short of 200 grams of BGA chips. So if my math is correct, that makes the BGA chips about 1 1/8% gold by weight. That's pretty fantastic. 1 1/8% gold by weight. Boy, that is just all over the place. I do it inside my workshop, but it's very hot, and the fans in there make it breezier than out here. So this is just going to bounce around a little bit. But still, that's pretty amazing. BGA chips about 1 1/8% gold by weight. They are probably by far richer in gold than any naturally occurring gold deposit anywhere on Earth. So, wow, fantastic. All right, well, I hope you folks. Boy, this just keeps ticking up. It's like my gold is growing. Usually, it's shrinking. Well, I hope you folks enjoyed this video and learned something from it. I know I did, and I had a little fun doing it. I didn't realize it was going to turn into a 3-day marathon adventure, but that's okay. I got a fair amount of gold out of it. I'll take 2 1/4 grams of gold. Anyway, thanks for watching. Give this video a like if you're so inclined, and perhaps subscribe to see future videos. Thanks again. Keep it safe out there. Bye.